All right, good morning, everyone. I think we're going to go ahead and get started because we have a very busy agenda. If you didn't get a set of headphones, definitely pick one of those up because, as you'll see, there's no amplification in the room, and so you need the headphones to be able to hear all the speakers very well. First of all, good morning. My name is Ingrid Timbo. I'm the Senior Water Specialist for the COP28 Presidency team. I am so excited to do this event, and I'm so excited to be here with you all and see so many friends in the audience. They made us wait until the last day of World Water Week, but here we are. We all made it together, and hello to everyone online as well. So today, kind of the agenda for this session is to go through our kind of initial plans. This is the launch of the COP28 water agenda. And this has been done in consultation with many of the partners in the room and online. And we'll kind of get into that in a little bit. But first, I wanted to have some framing remarks from our first speaker. Here's the overall agenda for today, but we're going to start with some framing remarks from Karin Gardis, who's the Chief Operating Officer and Acting Executive Director of SIWI, to give some of her reflections. So Karin, please.
Hello. Hi, everyone. Good to see you all in the room and probably online. The theme for this year's World Water Week, as you know, is Seeds of Change, Innovative Solutions for a Water-Wise World. This really demonstrates that we need to rethink how we use, value, and manage water if we are to address the crisis that we're in, and we are in a water crisis. And for this, we need incentives, we need innovations, we need to build trust, we need to build collaborations, and we need to put water and people at the center of everything that we do. And we have an opportunity to do that at the COP. This must involve every sector and every country. World Water Week is really offering that platform of making those connections and providing this space for all countries, all sectors, all stakeholders to come together and identify those solutions. This year's World Water Week is very much also harnessing the momentum that has been generated by the Water Action Agenda, the UN Water Conference 2023, and the Water Action Agenda that came out of it. And that has really laid the groundwork for this course correction that is needed for us to be able to perhaps be on track to achieve the 2030 goals. Integrated water-related priorities into the broader climate discourse is absolutely fundamental. We need to bring the water questions to the climate questions, and vice versa. And it's this two-directional ambition that we have set and that we've also had great discussions with the COP team around. So as countries are invited to update their national determined contribution, the NDCs, ahead of COP, the aim of COP28 is to be this catalyst and encouragement to further include water targets in the NDCs. But for that to happen, we need, again, to put water and people at the center of the COP. And I think we have an opportunity to do that. And we very much look forward to that to happen and to work towards that aim really proactively and with lots of energy and new ideas. So we want today to also open this discussion to rethink how we manage water, how we include water in not only the water discussions of the COP and the water pavilion, but beyond, how we spread those topics to the other pavilions, to the other discussions, to the main discussions and negotiations, and how we bring all of these other actors and pavilions into the water discussion and the water pavilion. And again, I think that's where ideas, innovations, governance systems, and new thinking around those are very much needed. So I've said it before, this holistic cross-sectoral perspective is absolutely fundamental and is at the basis of all of this. And we really want to mainstream that. I don't really like the term mainstreaming, but to integrate it, let's put it more like that, to integrate it into development, into climate, into disaster risk reduction, into environmental and economic planning strategies, policy frameworks. Everything that we do needs to have a water component and a water dimension. And that is really what I think today's discussion is all about. So we need to look at innovative financing models. We need to look at innovative governance models. We need to look at a new international architecture to tackle these issues. And we have the opportunities to do it. We have many water management interventions that are addressing these issues, that are looking at the cross-sectoral. So we need to seize the opportunity to demonstrate that when you do that, there is much, much more to gain. And both from, let's say, a sustainability perspective, an economic perspective, a climate mitigation and adaptation perspective, and that also mobilizes the needed resources to really deliver on that agenda. So having said that, we also need to, of course, make sure that we have the enabling environment, the enabling conditions to help this innovation take place and to help these progress and these new ways of working to happen. And therefore, an enabling policy and regulatory environment that really facilitates this transfer of technology, that rewards and creates a market for innovation to further support the investments going into this sector and towards these integrated solutions to break the silos in order to tackle climate change, both adaptation and mitigation, is at the core of our proposal and our discussion here today. So, of course, everything needs to be adapted to the local context, and this is also where we look very much at the governments and the local actors, the local communities, to guide us and to guide all of the stakeholders that will take place and that will interact and be active at the COP, to also be very vocal as to this is the local context, this is what we need, this is where the demand is, and we need to be able, as an international community, to respond to those needs. And they have pointed out that they want this integration of water in all the different sectors. So let us step up to that task and do precisely that. So having said that, we're really inviting, and I'm really happy to see a full room and lots of participants online as well for this, because this is important. And we want to really invite all actors that have anything to do related to water, and everyone has something to do related to water, to really support the efforts building up to the COP28 with really this proactive, dedicated, engaged ambition of helping linking global water and climate agendas for us to hopefully achieve a water secure and climate resilient future for all. So those were just a little bit of framing remarks, and I'll hand over to Ingrid.
Thank you, Karin. And yes, and thank you for inviting us to help plant some of these seeds of change at COP28 this year. So before I invite our next two speakers up, I just want to say something a little bit about the framing that the UAE has taken for COP28 this year. They were very clear from the start that they wanted to make sure that there was continuity between the UN 2023 Water Conference, which took place last March, and COP28 this year. The UAE sent a team to the UN Water Conference. They held events there this year. But part of that commitment wasn't just to kind of bring forward some of the action agenda and programming, but they also wanted to bring forward the champions as well. And so earlier this summer, the UAE COP president invited the Netherlands and Tajikistan to serve as water champions for the COP this year. So I'd like to invite first Maaike van Ginneken, the new Special Envoy for International Water Affairs of the Netherlands, to come and talk a little bit about what the Netherlands' vision is for water at COP28. Thank you.
Thank you. I know that I'm preaching to the converted here, but the urgency of water and climate action has never been greater. We've seen the droughts in the Sahel, floods here in Sweden, and this summer, just opening the newspaper, we've seen the devastating effects of climate change. That's a wake-up call, but I also think we need to think about the slower trends that are not in the newspaper. Food security depends on water. Changing climate patterns mean that harvests around the world are not what they should be. So on the one hand, the very acute emergencies we see in the newspaper, but also importantly, the invisible trends we see around the world. So we need to work together and learn from each other, with each other. It's the first time in history, in the history of the planet, that we collectively as a human race have fundamentally altered the water cycle. We need to act now. To enhance water security, to adapt to climate change, to reverse nature loss, to use water more efficiently, produce more crops. It's about safety, about health, economy. We must bring hope for the future. Let's not forget, this is also about fighting poverty, fighting hunger. We need to focus on the most vulnerable, who are already poor and hungry without climate change. So collective action on water and climate is pivotal. I'm very hopeful speaking here to you in Stockholm, sharing ideas, talking about innovation and exchanging perspectives. What I've seen here in Stockholm is that the water action agenda is underway. We're taking actions at the local level, the national level, at the international level. And we always focus on the stuff that's not going that rapidly, but let's also celebrate our successes. And I'm convinced that while the challenges are huge, we have the skills to face those challenges, because let's take a little bit of a longer term perspective, a couple of decades. We, the world, whoever is we, have half child mortality. And let's not forget how much water action has helped to that. Obviously through water and sanitation, but also because of flood protection, because of better basin management, etc. Floods are more frequent and are bigger because of climate change, but actually less people die because of floods now than 20 or 30 years ago. And the green revolution was also a blue revolution. We have figured out how to grow more crops, more food per drop, and we know that. So huge challenges ahead, but let's be self-assured enough that we've done this before. There are different challenges, but we have the skills to do this. It's great to see all the actions today. I come back from Stockholm in a few days, very much energized. And I think during the conference in March, the UN 2023 Water Conference, UN Secretary General Antonio Guterres, mentioned that water needs to be at the center of the global political agenda. We achieved that in March. We need to keep it there. Water needs to be at the heart of decision making. It needs to be at the heart of climate agenda. Climate mitigation is energy. I am cross-sectoral, worked in energy for a few years. Water adaptation is water. It is about water management. It is about water being in the wrong places too much or too little to grow our food, to live our lives, to have an economy. So the world needs us to keep putting water at the heart of decision making in the upcoming forum, and the COP28 is the most important upcoming forum we have. And we need to reach out to actors and partners out of the water bubble. Everybody is discussing that as if it's something really, really difficult. It's actually happening at the local level, right? A mayor of a small town doesn't think, now I'm in the water sector, now I'm in the food sector, now I'm in the energy sector, now I'm doing climate. The more you come to the global level, the more silos we have. But let's remember that people on the ground actually know how to do this, and we can learn from them. It's a great pleasure to speak to you today and to announce that the Netherlands will cooperate with the United Arab Emirates and Tajikistan, and together we'll bring water solutions for climate states from the historical UN 2023 Water Conference to the COP28. And my brother Sultan will speak after me. We have a great partnership between the Republic of Tajikistan and the Kingdom of the Netherlands, and it's great we can continue, Sultan. To realize those actions, the Water Action Agenda, the messages of the Global Commission on the Economics of Water, we need to fundamentally change how we deal with water, how we value water, and how we do our actions. But we do have the skills to do this. Themes that will be important at the COP are urban water resilience, freshwater ecosystems and biodiversity, and water and food. All specific themes that are critical for water and climate adaptation. All topics that necessitate us to reach out to people outside of the water bubble. So water connects the world. We've seen it in New York in March, and we'll see it again at COP28. So let's work together towards COP28. A lot of the work is doing it beforehand. Then you influence decision making. So let's not wait till we get to the COP. And see you all at COP. Thank you.
Thank you, Micah, and congratulations again on your new appointment, and we're very much looking forward to working with you over the next few months on delivering some high-impact outcomes at COP this year. So next, as Mike already mentioned, Tajikistan will also be joining us. So Sultan Rahimzoda, Special Envoy of the President of Tajikistan, if you could add on to what Micah said from your perspective.
Thank you. I think also, my dear sister, there is no way we are one family now. For excellent introduction to the theme, and indeed, we did really excellent job together. Tajikistan and the Netherlands hosted, but we did it together, making the UN 2023 Water Conference the watershed moment for the world. We created a momentum which should be kept and strengthened by the follow actions to have more longer success, long-term success. So for that, three key elements, basically, I mentioned in the previous sessions about the responsibility, about the continuity and accountability. And now I would like to thank Sivi, Karin and her team about ensuring this kind of platform for the continuity, to have this follow-up action, and also bridging basically the UN 2023 Water Conference for COP28. I would like to thank UAE for the willingness for such kind of great follow-up and integrate water in the COP28 agenda. It is really important. It was one of the key messages of the UN 2023 Water Conference. There is a need to integrate water in different events. Indeed, climate process is most important among all of them, since water and climate is too much interconnected. And the water under high risk of the impact of climate change, but at the same time, water plays an important role for adaptation, for mitigation, and for achieving the climate resiliency. So we are proud with the Netherlands to be invited to co-lead the work stream of the COP28, and indeed are willing to do our best to position water in the next COP28, in the next COP agenda, I mean, in Dubai, indeed, with the support of the host country, UAE, to have more stronger position of water in that agenda. And how we can do it, how we can achieve it, that is important question, and that requires the mobilization of the efforts of different parties. Well, I mentioned that we did it together, the success of the UN 2023 conference. It means that even for COP28, we are able to achieve success if we are mobilize our efforts. Not only three countries, UAE, Tajikistan, and the Netherlands, but other member states, development financial institutions, international organizations, and others. What we can do for that in terms of having the more visibility of water in COP28, and most important, I think, having stronger position of water in the outcome documents of COP28, that is really very complicated part. So the expectation of the world community from us, I mean, having this position of water in COP28, but for that we need, first of all, the support of the member states. And I think today's event is the right place, as you mentioned, to plant the seeds of water in the agenda of COP28. And the first message from this event should be our understanding, our request, and our proposal. Let's join us, work together to have this, to achieve this goal for the COP28. We have a lot of other events ahead of us. High-level week next month in New York, SDG Summit, Rome Water Dialogue in Rome in the beginning of October. There will be many other events, including the Africa Climate Summit, so there will be some more other events. So we need basically to use the platform of those events to mobilize efforts of different parties in this process. And we hope much that all of you will join us in this support. I think today's meeting will provide us an opportunity to hear from your side, from you, the ideas, the recommendations, the approach, how we can do it, how we achieve this success for the COP28. Again, we are willing to cooperate with all of you and wish the success for all of us. Good luck, and once again, so we will do our best using any platforms and opportunities to work together with different partners to have this success. So thank you very much, Ingrid, and UAE government also once again for your trust, inviting us, and again our willingness to cooperate with all of you to the visible and stronger position of water in COP28. Thank you.
Thank you, Sultan, and thank you again so much for being willing to continue on all the hard work that you all have been doing over the last couple of years to really make sure that we take this forward. So next, what I want to do before we actually go into kind of the three different outcomes themselves, and that's really what the rest of the programming will be about, so that you can hear from some of the partners that we're working with already. And I really want to get to them, but I figured it was probably important to give a little bit of context for this audience of the broader implications of COP kind of this year, what's going on there more broadly. Oops. And then also just, again, a little bit of an overview of the process that we've undertaken over the last 6 months to kind of get to this overarching framework for the COP28 water agenda. So this year is a really actually important year. I mean, every COP is important, but this one is especially important because we are kind of at the halfway point to 2030 from when the Paris Agreement was signed. And so what parties have been doing over the last, parties and the UNFCCC and stakeholders and others have been doing over the last 2 years is doing an exercise called the Global Stocktake. And this is, as the name implies, taking stock of climate action over the past 7 years. And what we will get at COP28 this year is the kind of outcome of that process. And we have not seen the document yet, but I think we all know already is that what we do know is that there's a lot of work that has been done, but we are not still moving fast enough and at the scale needed to hit our goals by 2030 or by 2050 either. And so that outcome document will come, and then that will be utilized by the parties to inform their new commitments. NDCs were already mentioned, nationally determined contributions, but there's also national adaptation plans, adaptation communications, a whole range of different documents that parties use to inform the UNFCCC. And so they will begin this 2-year process now of updating those for 2025. So it's a really critical moment for water to be there and be part of the conversation so that they can support the parties over this next 2-year process. And so in thinking about the formulation of what should the water agenda really focus on this year, we really wanted to focus on levers of action that can actually support parties. So on all 3 of them, we are looking very specifically at how can the global water community, how can whether it's policy, technical, capacity building, finance, how can that be brought to the table to support the parties themselves? So broadly, there's a pillar within COP28, and I'm not going to go over the entire COP28 agenda because we would be here for 3 more hours, and that's cruel. But pillar 3 of the COP28 agenda is specifically focused on putting nature, people, lives, and livelihoods at the heart of climate action. And this is really where water primarily, it fits in other areas as well, but it primarily fits under this pillar. And water has been chosen as one of the kind of key priority areas. We will have a dedicated day to food, agriculture, and water systems. That will take place on December 10th. But also, water programming is going to be integrated throughout the program. And I think this is something that was really important to the UAE in thinking about their programming. They really do want it to be integrated. They want there to be cross-sectoral collaboration. That was the idea of putting food and water together as a day. They're doing that with other days as well to make sure that there are conversations that are happening and we're not just sitting in our own silos within the agenda. And so the outcomes that we will be presenting today are kind of the 3 dedicated water outcomes, but as you see, they link to a lot of the other agenda items. And so we are currently in the process of formulating events and these sorts of things that will sit on other days as well and kind of be integrated into the broader programming. So how did we kind of go about this process, just very briefly? Obviously, we've already talked about the UN 2023 Water Conference, so that was kind of the start of the consultation process. And then going forward from there, we held so many stakeholder consultations within the sector to kind of get feedback from the community as to what you all thought our priorities should be this year. Then, as I mentioned, in June, we established this partnership with Netherlands and Tajikistan. And then over the last kind of 6 weeks, we've really been aligning on priority areas, both with the stakeholders, but also within the COP28 team as well, to make sure that there's kind of a harmonization process across the entire agenda. And then we're here, we're doing it, we're launching this agenda here today. And then, as Sultan actually mentioned, there are a number of other events, like the regional climate weeks, like UNGA, et cetera, going forward, where we will also be featuring some of the partners that we're working with and some of the outcomes there as well. So as was mentioned earlier by Micah, what we have landed on in terms of the kind of 3 pillars for water at the COP this year, the first is on protecting and restoring freshwater ecosystems. The second one is on accelerating urban water resilience. And the third one is on building water resilient food systems. So really looking at that integration of water and food, especially kind of at this high political level. Because as was also mentioned, on the ground, integration is happening, but we still really see a lot of bifurcation in the kind of policy space. So there's a lot of text on this slide, but just to say, and this is actually what we're going to be hearing about next, but we also wanted to make sure that we're not creating a bunch of new initiatives, a bunch of kind of new things for people to do, because there's already so much, as we've seen all week, there's so much action in this space. So we really wanted to utilize existing coalitions, existing work streams, existing projects in this space, and give them the platform of COP. To really, again, attract new partners, attract new countries, potentially attract new donors, et cetera. And so under protecting and restoring freshwater ecosystems, we are partnering with the governments of Colombia, DRC, Ecuador, Gabon, Mexico, and Zambia, and the stakeholder steering committee of the Freshwater Challenge. So this is WWF, IUCN, UNEP, the Ramsar Convention, the Nature Conservancy and Wetlands International, to bring forward the Freshwater Challenge. And Stuart Orr is going to talk more about that in a minute. Also to say, this was something that was launched at the UN 2023 Water Conference, so again, trying to show some continuity between the Water Action Agenda and COP this year. The second pillar is on accelerating urban water resilience. Similarly, we are partnering with an existing Catalyst initiative that was launched at the UN 2023 Water Conference. This is the Urban Water Catalyst Initiative. That is looking at climate resilience of water utilities, both financing and technical assistance. And then we are also going to be convening key actors, because what we really see in the urban water space is there are so many different actors, there's so many different initiatives, but there's not a lot of coherence and coordination when it comes to climate. And then they're also really not still connecting to parties. So we're utilizing the UNFCCC's Sharm el-Sheikh Adaptation Agenda, which was launched at COP27 last year, and creating a coalition of these organizations under that, so that there's continuity after COP. Because the other big thing was I didn't want to do events or things that just kind of end at COP. There needs to be a home for everything that we're doing so that the work can be taken forward. And so placing this under the Sharm el-Sheikh Adaptation Agenda means that there will be continuity and that it can move forward successfully. And then the third pillar is on building water resilient food systems. And as I mentioned, this was an area where we actually saw kind of a gap. There are organizations obviously working on these issues, but at the kind of political level, when you look at things like the Food Systems Summit, which just held its Stocktake earlier this summer, water's not really present there. And similarly, looking at the Water Action Agenda coming out of the conference in March, only 13% of the commitments dealt with water and food. And so we see this as a real opportunity to shed some light on this gap. And so we are going to have the first ever ministerial level dialogue on water resilient food systems. So agricultural and water ministers coming together, talking about this and committing to action in their next round of NDCs and NAPs. And along with that, to provide support, we are creating a 2-year working group to support parties in the integration of food and water systems in their NDCs and NAPs. So threw a lot of information at you. Now you're going to get a little bit of a deeper dive from our partners who are actually leading this team. So we're going to start with Outcome 1, and so I would like to introduce Stu Orr from WWF. He's their global freshwater lead, and he's going to take you through the Freshwater Challenge. Thanks, Ingrid. Yeah. You can just do slides. Thanks.
Thank you. As Ingrid said, we had a high-level event in New York, well attended, around the challenge. But the seeds of this idea were really born at the Ramsar COP about a year earlier, where it was actually the Colombian government that approached us and was lamenting the fact that there weren't consistent targets that they could measure against. It was that conversation that led to the partners being formed to be there to support them. We took that to the GBF. We took that into Montreal. More countries came on board. And with the great event in New York, we really felt there was some momentum. And we're extremely pleased to see the COP team pick this up and give it momentum. And we're very, very excited about where this can take us going forward. You've heard Mikey, and I think the comments you made are excellent. Freshwater ecosystems, freshwater at the front lines of climate change. And if we don't already know that in this room, we're seeing it in the news every single day. I mean, I think that the world is waking up to this reality that this is the medium in which their economies, their livelihoods are going to experience climate change. We also know, unfortunately, on the right-hand side, that progress towards goals like the SDG 6 are way behind, unfortunately. But water is included in some way, shape, or form in a number of conventions that you can see on this board. And all of those conventions, while they mention water in some way, really aren't coming together and unifying and saying, these are the things that we could measure that cut across these things. So the first thing to know about the freshwater challenge is we're not trying to create some other grand, big, new thing, but rather how do you create freshwater targets at a time that we need them that cut across all these conventions, and by doing so, lift them all up by having a consistent set that we can measure, work together to achieve, and attain over time. Quite a simple number. This fits in with the 30 by 30 targets. If you looked at the global state of restoration needs, the scientific partners that Ingrid mentioned came together and came up with these numbers. 300,000 kilometers of rivers and 350 million hectares of restored wetlands and ecosystems, okay? So if anything, this is a mechanism to catalyze, convene, contribute targeted interventions to really achieve these goals over time. Countries can individually put down their targets that will contribute to this over time. And that, of course, we have a process to go in defining the exact indicators, the exact measures, but it gives everybody the right direction. So the objectives of what we're trying to do here is to ensure that restoration and conservation of freshwater ecosystems is integrated and properly addressed in all of these international agreements that countries have signed up to, okay? Quantify those existing ambitions, and also account for those contributions. So we need to set baselines. We need to know how to measure, of course. We also need to know that it's not just about government work. It's non-state actors. It's the private sectors, NGOs. Let's figure out a methodology where we can all add up what we do and contribute to these goals over time. And by doing so, we believe we can accelerate implementation of freshwater commitments. We can attract more financing, we can do more work, we can link into other sectors, we have to go further into energy and food, etc. Bring these worlds together around a very common agenda. Support to members as we go forward, as we create some kind of momentum and some kind of body to lead this, as we work with the countries on the commitments. We see some main services proposed through this, which would be filling knowledge gaps on action, so working with the countries to show what kinds of projects, what kinds of measures are the right kinds of things that we can do together. Build that data and that information and share it across. Facilitate coordination and inclusivity, linked, of course, to those multilateral agreements, whole of government approaches, whole of society, marginalized groups, private sector. Here's a real opportunity to bring all those efforts together and unite them through these targets. And of course, we want to mobilize resources for implementation, not necessarily going out there and seeking massive amounts of new finance, but there's lots of money out there that can be repurposed, moved into, or shifted into achieving these goals, again, in line with the other commitments that governments have made. So again, we thank COP28 team very much for this opportunity. We look forward to taking this forward with the countries. We've got a lot of work to do between now and COP, but the conversations we've had here in Stockholm already have been extremely exciting. So thank you very much.
Stu mentioned a really important point, too, that I failed to do earlier, but we are also looking for continuity across the different conventions as well. And so we were also looking for initiatives and programs that can really help us make some of the connections, because this is something that we hear from parties all the time, is that they have all these different conventions, they have all these different targets reporting. And so one of the things that we're looking for is things that can help actually support them and not add additional work for them. So just to make that note as well. So we're going to switch to outcome 2 now, accelerating urban water resilience. And as I mentioned, we're kind of taking a two-pronged approach with this one. So we're going to start with a short presentation from Teresa Hubscher from GIZ. She's an advisor for the water sector program there. She's going to talk a little bit about the Urban Water Catalyst Initiative. Teresa.
Good morning, everyone, and a special thanks to Ingrid and to Salma for the opportunity to present the Urban Water Catalyst Initiative briefly today. That was established by the government of Germany and with support of the Netherlands and the European Union. At the UN Water Conference early this year in March 2023, we learned that a tripling of capital investments, which comes up to $260 billion annually, would be needed in order to still achieve SDG 6 by 2030. So we're completely off track. And if this wasn't frightening enough, population growth, urbanization, and energy prices are a rising trend, not a decreasing one. And while weather extremes are globally intensifying and disproportionately affecting low and middle income countries, we need a paradigm shift in the global water finance architecture. So similar to what Karin said in her keynote in the beginning, our German minister Svenja Schulze used to say that the climate crisis is first and foremost a water crisis. Water stress, drought, and flood especially affect cities and their urban populations. So utilities are the key actors that provide a reliable and resilient wash services to growing urban populations. Yet they often do not receive the sufficient funding, infrastructure maintenance, and they lack in capacities and miss on long-term concepts for operational cost coverage. Hence, they're hampering their transition to capital market financing. Many utilities in middle and low-income countries perform poorly. As you can see in the orange zone, more than 50% do not cover their operational and maintenance costs. So it is, of course, not possible to contribute in any way to reaching SDG 6 nor 13 if your operational efficiency is limited, if you have insufficient self-financing at hand, and if inadequate access to public and commercial finance is the norm. So what UCI is planning to do is not fund those utilities who are already performing well because they are already in the top ladder zone, but really those with strong leadership and a willingness to reform, which means to invest in climate resilient infrastructure, in providing wash to underserved vulnerable population groups because they do not have the purchasing power. They are not a low-hanging fruit that provides you a quick return on investment, but they are crucial if we really still want to achieve SDG 6. And then equally important, including gender equity as an indicator of success. So shifting away from traditional project finance, UCI will offer those utilities a complementary set of technical assistance and financing for systemic performance turnarounds as a company so that they can finally be independent of ODA. The foundation of UCI is a partnership between public donors, development financiers, and hopefully in the future also impact first investors who discover the profitability of urban water. The initiative is structured in two pillars. As you can see here on the left hand, there's a technical assistance and grant facility, and on the right, an investment window for corporate loans and guarantees that is planned to be started approximately around 2026. So we really offer a range from just-in-time TA, for example, through already existing water operator partnerships, and short-term grants to improve revenues and cash flows to achieve credit worthiness of the utilities in order for them to then, at a later stage, be able to receive domestic blended finance in order to also reduce transactional costs. Together with our partners, the Netherlands and the European Union, we had launched UCI at the UN Water Conference 2023 as a commitment of the Water Action Agenda. At COP28, we're happy to launch the start of our UCI piloting program, starting this October with the first 7 utilities that we are currently selecting, based on commonly agreed on eligibility criteria, but out of which the reform-mindedness weighs the most. In the inception phase, compacts will first be concluded with political leaders and the partner structures and the utilities, which define the agreed-upon corporational goals, milestones, and roles. within the framework of a 100-day program tailored to the respective utility action plans, will achieve the agreed objective and business plans, and they will be drawn upon and updated. Moreover, and we're very thankful for having that opportunity, we will launch at COP28 our UCI multi-stakeholder sounding board, which we are currently setting up and which will consist of different stakeholders stemming from civil society, from financing institutions, from private business, from philanthropic partners, and also from cross-sectoral networks like the Resilient Cities Network. So thank you very much for COP28 for giving us the opportunity to have this very important stage in the climate community to launch again this important initiative. Thank you.
Thank you, Teresa. And yes, one of the things that we definitely identified was the importance of utilities as kind of, well, certainly not the only driver of urban water resilience, a very important entry point. And so we wanted to make sure that there was some explicit inclusion of them there. Next, I am going to invite my colleague Sakina Joseph from the Climate Champions team up to talk a little bit about what we are proposing as this Urban Water Resilience Coalition under the Sharm el-Sheikh Adaptation Agenda. This is something that is pretty new, that we are still working on the exact outcome for, but we've convened a bunch of the stakeholders thus far and are looking forward to working with Sakina and her team on how to deliver this at COP and critically beyond. Sakina?
Thank you, Ingrid. So first, let me just start with a brief background about the Climate Champions team. So to connect the work of the government, with the many voluntary and collaborative actions taken by cities, regions, businesses, and investors, nations decided to appoint two UN high-level champions. The UN climate change high-level champions for COP25 and COP26, Gonzalo Muñoz and Nigel Topping, established the Climate Champions team to help deliver their mandate, to enhance ambition, and strengthen the engagement with state and non-state actors in supporting parties to deliver the goals of the Paris Agreement. Dr. Mahmoud Moladeen and Her Excellency Ms. Razan Al Mubarak are the UN high-level champions for COP27 and COP28. One of their key focus areas is placed on connecting initiatives and coalitions with national action plans such as the NDCs to the Paris Agreement. This helps bring more transparency with result tracking and lends demonstrable credibility to climate action. So at the moment, we're working to establish a working group led by key partners to foster multi-level collaboration and action between local, regional, and national levels to effectively address climate challenges in the urban space. We're exploring hosting this and facilitating this work within Sharm el-Sheikh Adaptation Agenda, which was launched at COP27, apologies. This was co-created by the COP27 Presidency, the high-level champions, and the Marrakesh Partnership. So as you can see here, the Sharm el-Sheikh Adaptation Agenda represents a new chapter in climate adaptation, dedicated to bridging the adaptation gap and bolstering world's most vulnerable communities. The Sharm el-Sheikh Adaptation Agenda provides a set of 30 outcomes that need to be met by 2030 to advance adaptation and resilience, action across food and agriculture, health systems, human settlement, coastal and ocean, infrastructure, water and natural systems, planning and policy, and finance to ultimately lead to resilience for 4 billion people by 2030. Sharm el-Sheikh Adaptation Agenda is a convener, a connector, a platform to mobilize action and actors bridging state and non-state actors to address adaptation and resilience in a consolidated manner across systems, moving beyond the silos that we've seen. Further to this, it will help inspire and implement global goal on adaptation and contribute to the Global Stocktake with a portfolio of solutions. The Sharm el-Sheikh Adaptation Agenda will serve as aspirational adaptation outcomes for global adaptation action towards 2030 and inform state and non-state adaptation agendas. So the high-level champions will enable the delivery of the Sharm el-Sheikh Adaptation Agenda and ensure continuity of work. to the next high-level champions and for the next COP presidencies. The COP presidencies, the UNFCCC, will provide strategic guidance on alignment to the adaptation and resilience priorities and narrative with global agendas. They will also rally state and non-state actors, mobilize partnerships for the Sharm el-Sheikh adaptation implementation. They will also represent the Sharm el-Sheikh adaptation agenda at key global climate policy conferences. All of this is to accelerate the implementation of adaptation and resilience. So the first implementation report will be launched at COP28, where it will showcase progress on adaptation and resilience towards the Sharm el-Sheikh adaptation solutions. So stay tuned for that. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Sakina. And again, so this is looking at how do we integrate water systems across all, as you can see here, they're really looking at kind of the integration in a cross-sectoral manner. And so placing this working group here was very strategically chosen because, again, they are working together kind of across sectors. And certainly at the urban scale, we really need to ensure that that is happening. So, moving on to outcome 3, building water resilient food systems. This was the one actually that that to me felt very, very critical coming out of just all the other conferences that we have already talked about in this space. And because the UAE chose to put water and food systems together as a thematic day, we felt that it was really important to have some sort of higher political moment attached to this. And so that is where the idea of having this first ever COP ministerial on water resilient food systems came from. And when we were thinking about different partners that we wanted to work with on this, obviously, as the president, the UAE would be co-hosting this at least, but we really wanted to have other countries on board who were supportive. And one of the first countries that we reached out to was Brazil. And in particular, their agricultural ministry, because again, we wanted to make sure that this wasn't something that was again going to be siloed within water ministries themselves. And so very grateful to the government of Brazil, to their new Minister of Agriculture for agreeing to co-host this. And we thought it was really important to have them here as well to speak a little bit about why Brazil thinks this is very important as a topic and what they are hoping for at COP28 this year. So I believe online we have Gustavo dos Santos Goretti, who's the General Coordinator of the Irrigation and Soil and Water Conservation within Brazil Ministry of Agriculture and Livestock. Gustavo?
Yes, I'm here. Yes. Can you hear me? Can
Great.
you hear me?
Sorry.
English?
Yes, Gustavo, we can hear you.
Oh, okay. Thank you very much once more. And first, I would like to thank you, the COP team, and Ingrid and Salma for inviting Brazil to help us with the event, and especially the COP28 host, UAE, for putting the water and food system in the agenda together for the first time in a high-level event. So I'm gonna read a little speech that I made today so I can not make mistakes by English and Portuguese. So I stand before you here today under this World Water Week in Stockholm with a sense of pride and optimism, as Brazil takes a handful place as a co-host of the first ever COP high-level ministerial dialogue on water and food systems, focused on integration the water-food nexus. This is an incredible opportunity for us to collectively address one of the most pressing challenges of our time, the intricate relationship between water and food systems. As we gather here to discuss this vital issue, it's imperative and acknowledge that the global context we find ourselves in. The world has observed concerning patterns. There has been noticeable increase in floods, in droughts related acute food insecurity and malnutrition all over the world. Africa, Central America, and South Africa are the most that we know here. These regions are facing harsh reality disrupted water and food systems emphasize the urgency of our discussion. Furthermore, the specter of climate change hangs over us, a potential force that will greatly amplify the change we face for food products and availability. High temperatures and shifting rainfall patterns directly impact the crop yields, putting at risk the food security for millions. Global warming further threats to weaken the soil health and ecosystem, undermining the very foundation of sustainable agriculture. In this context, Brazil's role as a co-host in this dialogue is not just important, but also well-timed. Brazil, which its rich biodiversity and the vast agricultural potential, has a unique opportunity to lead the way in crafting innovation solutions that integrate water and food systems harmoniously. One of our strengths lies on the ability to increase production with the same land area. Through advances in agricultural practice and technology, we have demonstrated that growth isn't synonymous of deforestation or ecological harm. But let us not forget that we are not acting isolated. The challenges we face are global, and the solution must be collective and collaborative, respecting the principles of equality and common but differentiated responsibility and respective capability. This dialogue represents an opportunity for us to share our experience, best practice, and expertise. Through an open dialogue, we can collectively invade the future where our nation thrive together and prioritize the water-food nexus. At the heart of this discussion lies the crucial need to improve water and land use efficiency. Water is the lifeblood of our ecosystem. It's a finite resource and demands our utmost respect and careful management. We have to do the duty of future generations to utilize the water in the land wisely and responsibly. Invest in technology and optimize those issues is not merely a choice, but a necessity. By harnessing the power of innovation, we can improve our agricultural practice, ensuring that every drop of water counts. Furthermore, embracing conservation agriculture techniques is the key to building a sustainable future. Embracing methods of revitalize soil health and protect the balance of ecosystem is a significant move towards ensuring that the food production system can thrive in the long run. Central to these transformations is the idea of water storage for irrigation systems. Water storage is not only mitigate the impact to droughts, but also allow us to utilize water when it's most needed. By enhancing our storage infrastructure, and we can optimize water distribution and utilization, fostering greater resilience and face unpredictable climate patterns. In the spirit of collective progress, it's imperative that we improve the integration of water and food systems with our national commitment. As we prepare to next round of NDCs, NAPs, and adaptation communication, we must take holistic approach under the principle of equity and common but different responsibilities and respect the capability. This national determination commitment should reflect our dedication to find harmony between water and food systems, encapsulating our determination to act responsibly and sustainably. This integration should be driven by national determination approach, recognize the unique context of change of each nation. Crucially, the discussion must extend beyond the words to get tangible actions. We must identify means to accelerate and scale up the action, supported by robust financing and international cooperation. The challenges before us are significant, but also are the opportunities for collaboration. By joining the force across borders, we can leverage expertise, share resources, and drive innovation in unpredictable ways. As we move forward to this new era of change, let's stand firm in our dedication to sustainable development. Let's work hand in hand to build resilient water and food systems that safeguard the well-being of our planet and inhabitants. Through improvement water use efficiency, technical innovation, regenerative agriculture, and integration national commitments, we can forge a path towards a sustainable proposed future for all. In conclusion, Brazil are honored to co-host this dialogue. Let us seize this moment to turn challenges into opportunities and pave the way for the world where prosperity and harmony between water and food systems prevail. Thank you very much.
Muito obrigada, Gustavo, and thank you not only for your words, but also your actions taken not only towards this dialogue, but working together with us over the next 2 years on the integration of water and food systems in the NDCs. So the last but certainly not least speaker that I want to bring up today is my friend Rachel McDonald, who is the Deputy Director General for Research and Development at the International Water Management Institute. And she's going to talk a little bit about the technical and capacity support component of this outcome that we will be providing over the next 2 years through a working group within the UNFCCC on water resilient food systems. Rachel.
Thank you, Ingrid. Thank you, COP28, for bringing water and food together. This is really important. This day, it's going to galvanize and break down some of those silos that we seem to have spent the whole week talking about here in Stockholm Water Week, but in also many other forums we have these silos. Gustavo set the scene very well, and we have this fantastic ministerial dialogue, which means we're going to drive at a very high level the changes that we see. But we also need a working party to try and bring solutions together. So that's what I'm going to talk about right now. So the working party, it will be housed within the UNFCCC, and the leading organizations are the UN, the FAO is coming there, IMI and our umbrella organization, the CHIR, the Global Resilience Partnership, the World Economic Forum is going to bring in the private sector. The food and beverage industry is so important. But also critically, we're going to have the World Farmers Organization there. They represent smallholder farmers. These are often some of the communities that are most at risk from climate change. They produce 30% of the food globally, but more importantly, they produce 60% of the food in the global south. So the fact that they're going to be part of this group is really important. So we have our day, December the 10th, where we are going to break down silos. We are going to bring water and food together. So why is that important? Well, we were all there in New York. And as Ingrid said, we had 13% of the commitments to the water action agenda were to do with agriculture, yet agriculture uses 70% of the world's water resources. It means we don't have enough catalyst for change at this level through the water action agendas for what is needed for the biggest water user. But similarly, we've just had the UN Food Systems Summit in Rome. And what came out of it is just like, try and find the word water, and you are going to struggle hard. So it means we have these two very powerful groups that have such impact on each other, are not speaking together. We're not joint programming. When you read an NDC or a NAP, particularly of a country in the global south, look at the water risks. Number 1, water security. Number 2, food security. Or number 1, food security. Number 2, food security. And yet the solutions we develop, what we're trying to do, they rarely come together. So COP28, thank you for your leadership in this. And of any country, you really understand why water and food security are so important. So what are we going to be doing in this working program? We want your help, number one. Make sure you step up, make sure you join and come and help us with this. We are going to be looking at how we can bring evidence, technical solutions, finance, policy coherence across water and agriculture, unheard of, and lots of ideas on funding to be able to bring those solutions. So yes, we are going to unite, we are going to act, and we are going to deliver. And I also look forward to seeing how we can link across the other two outcomes. Cities are often some of the most food insecure, so we should be linking with you. And agriculture is not always kind to our environment. So outcome number one, we will also need to be linking across to there. So we can see a real opportunity. Let's take that opportunity at COP28 and break down those two big silos between water and food. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Rachel. And yes, thank you for extending the invitation for more partners also to be getting involved in these processes. One other critical partner for this that we have been talking to as well is the NDC partnership. And for those of you who maybe aren't familiar with the NDC partnership, they really support parties in the kind of technical assistance side of developing national climate plans. And so they have a very good understanding of what parties are asking for, where they need support on all different sectoral issues, not just on water, not just on food, but they can help us really hone in on specific areas where we, through this working group, can be of assistance to parties. So just to mention that as well. So again, now we threw even more information at you, and we do have a little bit of time. And so we wanted to invite my colleague Selma Zayed up from the COP28 water team to moderate some Q&A, but also selfishly, many of you have met Selma online through this consult. I said we did a consultation process earlier. You might have heard this. Selma did a consultation process. So she is the one who has really been driving a lot of this work over the last 6 months to engage the stakeholders and push this forward. And I feel most like I'm just supporting her in this process. But I wanted to give an opportunity for everyone to clap for Selma as well for all of the work she's been doing. And also to mention my colleague, Shabana Tirmizi, who's not here right now, but she's also been driving a lot of the work for the water team as well. But yes, if you have questions, you can raise your hand. We have some roving mics as well. Selma, please.
Also, I just want to say thank you, Ingrid, for this, and thanks everyone. It's so good to see all of you in person that I've been speaking to, and the new faces I saw and met and had the honor to work with over the last week. So thank you so much.
Should I go ahead?
Yes, please.
Can you hear me? Yeah. Thanks so much. Very exciting to hear about all this work. My name's Martin Gamble. I'm a consultant to the World Bank. I worked there for a number of years, and it's very interesting and important to hear about silos and about the water bubble. I'm concerned we're not talking about the sanitation bubble. And sanitation is intimately linked. I'm assuming we're talking about water and it's shorthand for water and sanitation, I hope, and water writ large. 2/3 of the water supply and sanitation sector's GHG emissions come from sanitation, 2/3 of them, from both sewers and on-site. Carbon, direct and indirect, methane and nitrous oxide, firstly. Secondly, a recent paper from the University of Leeds shows that 50%, half of all greenhouse gas emissions in the city of Kampala come from their sanitation systems, most of which are on site. So I urge us, I'm hoping it's shorthand and that you're meaning it's in there, but we really need to bring sanitation squarely into this discussion. for a number of reasons. And there's a coalition of climate resilient sanitation collaborators. UNICEF, WHO, the World Bank and others are involved in that. So please talk to us about that and involve us if you're not doing already. And a final comment on this, mangroves, as one example, all of these unintended consequences and links, 5 times more powerful as carbon sinks than forests are, but mangroves are susceptible to wastewater pollution and become less resilient because their roots are shallower when there's nitrogen and phosphorus in the water from runoff. So closing the agricultural link with nitrogen and phosphorus from wastewater and wastewater reuse should also be part of this. So there's a lot there that needs to be in. I'm hoping it's in there, but if not, let's put it in there before COP28. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Thanks, Martin, for that. And definitely sanitation is super important. We've been hearing about it for the last 6 months. It is embedded in our current outcomes. So, for example, on the urban pillar, we mentioned that we are convening key actors. You can't hear me. Can you hear me now? Okay, great. So we are convening key actors. Part of these actors are sanitation actors. We are involved with several of you. I know I saw some faces here from Sanitation and Water for All, for example. So we've been engaging with them a lot over the last few months. But also what I want to say is that this is the water pillar, but it's not exclusive, as we mentioned. So sanitation fits in under health, for example, and we are working with our health team under the COP28 Presidency team to embed sanitation in there. I don't want to go into a lot of details because I want to give time for the rest of you to ask questions, but also on mangroves. Mangroves is a key focus area under our nature pillar. So again, here we are focusing on presenting water, but we are very open to considering others across the thematic programming.
Yeah, so Gidon Bromberg from EcoPeace Middle East and a member of the Transboundary Water Cooperation Coalition. And clearly I'm going to raise what I really see missing here is transboundary water cooperation. The UAE was considering highlighting this issue, highlighting water and peace, highlighting water and security. Transboundary water cooperation is at the heart of all of these issues. I mean, it is the theme, perhaps, of events coming up in the next year that CIWI and others are leading. The UN is leading in. I really think a fourth pillar here is missing, and that is transboundary water cooperation, and the coalition that has recently established would be, I think, really delighted to help move that agenda forward together at COP28.
Thank you so much. Yes, Ingrid, and I just want to add something else, that we've been in consultation with a lot of people working on transboundary. We're looking at ways to embed them. Ingrid will say more. And I also want to just add a comment from the chat about transboundary to just bucket all this together. Someone specifically asked about pillar number 1, so maybe this is a question for Stu and the freshwater team to answer. How is the freshwater challenge addressing transboundary collaboration, and do other pillars foresee that?
Yeah, we can let Stu answer that one specifically, but specifically on transboundary, I totally agree. Obviously, you know that I agree that that is a hugely important topic. One of the things that we're thinking about for that is there is a whole day on peace, security, fragility, and to me, that is where we really want this conversation to be happening. And so we are looking at opportunities. We're working, I should have said this, maybe I didn't in the beginning, but there's many me's for the other pillar, for the other thematic areas as well. And we all know each other, and the UAE team has been actually quite good at making us talk to one another. And so I do talk with our colleagues, and we are working on the programming piece right now over these next couple of weeks. And I've been in contact with the coalition as well about how we can make sure that this is something that makes the presidency agenda, because I agree it's extremely important. And the UAE has also said previously that this is something they want. So, yeah. And then Stu can, if we have the mic for Stu, or he can just come down.
It's easy for me to come down. Can you hear me okay? Yes, to the extent the freshwater challenge and transboundary, certainly the discussions are with government It doesn't by any means preclude that this couldn't be transboundary targets. Absolutely. Its governments are setting the target. We've been in discussions with RBOs and other organizations as such. So I think it doesn't call out national targets, so undoubtedly there's transboundary nature to this. And also to the water and sanitation comment, and it's, the restoration targets around wetlands, for example, don't forget the definition of wetlands is also mangroves. And so the restoration agenda here is very much linked into the idea that we need to restore these systems, not just for biodiversity, of course, but for the other conventions that we have up there. And many of those are linked into the water and sanitation agenda. So maybe it is more implicit than explicit, but I would suggest there's a lot of opportunity there. Thank you.
So, yeah, we have time for 2 more questions. Okay. Yes.
The mic is not on. Hello? It's not working. Okay, okay, thank you. My name is Kai Zimmermann. I represent in Senaga Foundation as an NGO and a German business company, Wund Holding. We already preparing our participation to the COP, our side events. And my question is there any platform where we can link and share our events, share our experience to form the strong family of water? Thank you.
Maybe I can just get that very quickly. Yes. So we have our programming committee. You can submit your side events there. We are, like, the team is very integrated. We know what happens or what events are submitted there, and we just make sure that everything is linked together and fits to the overall COP outcomes and goals. So yes, please do submit your programming requests.
And one thing on that, yes. So there is a great platform actually to mention, and that would be the Water Pavilion that is happening again at COP this year. So I'm standing up here wearing my COP28 hat. I have another hat, and I am also on the steering committee of the Water Pavilion. So that is obviously in the civil society side of things. It will be in the blue zone. We did get confirmation on it last week. I don't know. That's yay! So there will be the third water pavilion at a COP this year, and I would suggest linking with my colleagues from CIWI who can raise their hand. Oh, Ivan's right behind you, even closer, and he can help link you to the water pavilion. Yep, thanks.
Yes, please.
Can you hear me? Hello, my name is Juan Pablo Romero. I'm a consultant, and the question has to do with there's an ongoing movement, especially in Colombia, about debt, external debt for climate actions. So I was wondering if the water sector has a proposal on that, because that's an international political movement that is taking force. So I was wondering if there's any agenda on that. Thank you.
Yeah, I missed a bit of it too. Sorry, so can you please just repeat that again?
Yes, basically the government of Colombia is promoting an initiative about debt, external debt for climate. So basically to swap debt for climate actions.
Yes.
So I was wondering if the water sector has something on it for COP28, because there's a massive political movement on that.
So, I mean, out of these focus areas, this is not included here, but broadly, these conversations are happening and are active across the COP team. But for water, if someone has a proposal for what we could do around that, please feel free to share that with us. But currently, these are 3 focus areas, and we welcome any more from our partners.
Hi. Hello. Shall I go? Okay. Hi, so my name is Meghna, and I'm rapporteuring this session as well. So I think this question comes from the youth perspective, because many times COP comes under a critical purview of emissions, actually. So, the carbon footprint of COP26 was twice of what it was in COP25. And very recently, I came across one video of a very famous band called Coldplay, and they just put out their carbon footprint for their tour, which they said that has come down from their previous tour. So, I mean, for something like a COP, which actually works around climate change, to go on increasing their footprint when somebody, which is a music band, is actually reducing it. I would like to hear your comments on that, and also more than a question, probably a comment that perhaps you can have water footprint as well, is particularly because this is happening at UAE, and I'm sure there are technologies in place where you can probably measure the water footprint of the entire COP. And I think it's time that we start measuring water footprints for all such conventions which happen around climate change. And otherwise, it's just only the water people talking about water. So if you really want the word to spread across all other sectors, perhaps it's time that we start bringing out reports and data which matter. Thank you.
Thank you so much for this. And let me get the first one. Definitely carbon footprints is something we are thinking about. It's something that we consider in every step of the way in designing. We have a whole team for events and sponsorship that has been working for over a year on that to make sure we take into account the carbon footprint, the climate considerations for the COP venue. So this is something that is definitely on our radar, thinking about every day and every second. Water footprint, great suggestion. I would love to see the data and the support from all the partners to do something like that. It is definitely something on our radar. We've been hearing about water footprints and data all the time for the last 7 months. And I want to see the tools and the mechanisms that we can do that. So please, please reach out to me and let's try to see how we can make that happen. And with 5 minutes to go, I'd like to hand over to our Director of Partnerships, Dane McQueen, to give closing remarks.
Thank you, Salma. Thank you, everyone, for coming today. Just quickly, as you can imagine where we are in the world, water is a topic that preoccupies us, but what really struck us in the consultations this year was how frequently it came up and from how diverse of a set of actors. I would note in particular, too, that the frontline communities that we consulted with were the most vocal about water. And so there is a kind of equity lens here to bringing water into the agenda. We were also very, very fortunate that we're following in the footsteps of the UN 23 Water Conference. And as you saw, Netherlands and Tajikistan thought they were going to the beach, and we have pulled them back in for another half year. But this is really an opportunity for us to just keep momentum going and keep people focused on commitments that they've made and great ideas that they surfaced. And so I wanted to flag 3 different tracks where we're hoping to channel all of this energy into. So the first is within the negotiations itself. And obviously, as the presidency, we have to be a neutral, good faith arbitrator between many, many conflicting views. But I would say that the negotiations process rewards people who are organized, loud, and diverse. And so to the extent that the stakeholders in this room, the parties, the observers, can start putting out some position papers on what they want to see in the Global Stocktake outcome on water, it's really, really helpful to us because we can point and say, look, all these people have asked for this, so we're obligated to use it. And this becomes that outcome that says this is what we're going to do toward 2030 in response to the global stocktake, as well as the global goal in adaptation and potentially loss on damage. So really, really please start organizing and being loud. Second point is the action agenda. As you heard, these are the kind of 3 topics that came up the most in the conversation. By no means is this an exhaustive list. And as Salma mentioned, we're very, very keen in the intervening months to make sure that we are platforming, and this is really a crowdsourcing exercise, and platforming those efforts that have credibility and innovation and a kind of a longer term cycle ahead of them. And then the third point is this can all kind of come together, both the negotiations and the non-negotiated side in the summit piece. And it's been good to hear this week how many people want there to be a summit moment where heads of state and government are making commitments on water. We really, really need support in identifying what that ask is. We've heard a couple of different proposals, some of them around finance, some of them around elevating some of the events you heard today to head of state government level. we would really like in the next kind of 2 to 3 weeks to finish consultations on what this could look like. And just to flag, in other sectors, they've mostly mobilized around fairly quantitative targets like tripling renewable energy or announcing X billion dollars for health climate finance. So we're looking for those kind of comparable and to be vulgar, maybe media-friendly headlines, so that people can just quickly take away this is what is happening on water. This is what the direction is. So thank you again for all of your engagement over the last several months and this week. We look forward to many, many more exchanges in the coming weeks. Lots of WhatsApp messages, emails, calls that you'll be getting from us, and we now have a wider net with Netherlands and Tajikistan to capture all of these inputs, and then look forward to welcoming you to Dubai at November 30th to December 12th. Thank you so much.